Okay. So we're doing our InstaLive today at 1. I'm waiting for Patrick. He just sent me a picture of him with like a full-blown mud mask though. So hopefully he'll be here in just a second. There you are. Okay. Request to join. We're going to see if this works on the first shot. All right. It's waiting for Patrick. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Okay, now I'm like, all right, 2 faces. Our faces are here now. Good job. Getting your face up in our InstaLive. Dude, are you excited about this?
I'm thrilled, actually.
I feel like both of us have been wanting to rant super hard on this for like a minute, and now we have the opportunity. Can you hear me?
You just paused for a good, like, hot 4 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the internet working against me. The internet's patriarchy. I was saying, I feel like we have wanted to rant about this for a while because it's so frustrating.
Gosh. It is so frustrating. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, first of all, you have to tell us your credentials. I want one impressive professional thing about you and then one impressive, just ridiculous thing about you.
Oh my gosh. One impressive credential. So I'm a registered nurse and I work in women's health. I am a labor and delivery nurse. I'm also certified in all matters women's health. And something crazy about me. I mean, I'm 6'4". That's pretty impressive to some people, but you know.
That's kind of impressive. I mean, you didn't really do anything to make that happen.
Shout out to my genes.
I'll give you
Mom
that.
And dad.
Yeah.
God bless you.
All right, cool. So, and you're one of how many labor and delivery nurses in the nation? It's a crazy low number, right?
So, labor and delivery nurses, like, we are a rare specialty, but there are something like, I don't know, 54,000, I don't know.
Oh, but like, male nurses, sorry.
Oh,
like,
male? So male OB certified, which is different than like male, there are other male labor and delivery nurses out there, but when I got my certification, so you have to take this test. It's really long, awful, and you have to do things like talk about postpartum, blah, blah, blah. But they called and said that I was the 18th in the country, like active member that was a dude.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And you know things about postpartum.
Ugh, postpartum.
No, you're like the gay patriarchy.
Ibuprofen.
No, you're the gay patriarchy, not the patriarchy. That doesn't count. Okay, so ectopic pregnancies and the idea that we can relocate ectopic pregnancies, which has become a really big thing because of an Ohio bill that was put forth, right? That basically said, when possible, like it was that type of language, you should try to relocate it. So tell me the history of relocating a pregnancy like that.
So first, like, let's just do a quick like run through of how like a pregnancy happens and how an ectopic pregnancy happens, right? So you're like once a month you ovulate, right? So you know your ovaries release an egg into like these fibrous little finger thingies, right, that go into your fallopian tube, and then you know when you have sex, sperm goes inside. And all the way up through your cervix into your uterus, like into those tubes, and that's where a pregnancy begins, or that's where the egg is fertilized by the sperm. And then after that, the fertilized egg, the baby, makes its way down the fallopian tubes into the uterus and attaches itself, usually within about 3 days. So with an ectopic pregnancy, the uterus pretty much, the sperm makes it up to the fallopian tubes, fertilizes the egg, and then where the baby would implant itself into the uterus, it implants itself into the fallopian tube, and it stays there. So it kind of joins into the tissue in the fallopian tube. So this is very unfortunate because there is no chance during this that this will be a viable pregnancy, or that this baby has a chance for life. And left alone, it can rupture and the woman can die. So there are 2 ways to treat it. The first is surgically. So they go in laparoscopically, they remove the ectopic pregnancy. And that, you know, that's one way. But the other way is methotrexate. So it's a cancer drug, actually, like a chemotherapy. And you give an injection, and that causes the tissue that's developing to stop and to either be reabsorbed or to come out with like bleeding and all these things. So those are the only two treatments for ectopic pregnancy. There have been 2 case studies reported about physicians who have taken ectopic pregnancy. So taken these babies who are stuck in the fallopian tubes, attached into the tissue on the inside of the fallopian tube, and moved it to the uterus. So the first one was in 1917, and then the second one was in 1980. So when you look at the one in 1917, here's the thing. We know that after things like abortions, after miscarriages, and after ectopic pregnancies, you can ovulate 10 days after that, right? So the result from these 2 situations was a healthy pregnancy. But
you're
does that
paused.
mean...
Okay, hold on. The result is a healthy, so it
pregnancy.
paused you. So it said the result is a healthy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
the result for this is these 2 cases ended in after the doctor said that he went in and moved, because it's in both situations, it's a he. Most OBGYNs now are women, but in this situation, he took that tubal pregnancy and implanted it into the uterus. So it's false. It's you know, witchcraft medicine. It's not. Do I deny that, you know, perhaps like 40 weeks later, these 2 women had healthy newborn babies? Yeah, absolutely. But it's because women are so fertile after losses that what is very likely to have happened in both situations is that these women conceived again after these tubal pregnancies were moved into the uterus, and then gave birth to babies later. So that's, you know, one situation. The others are just that these doctors are lying. So when we look at, and I'll, you know, reference like ACOG, the American College of Gynecologists, and, you know, a million other things. This is not medical practice. This is not something that like anybody can really do. It's not a thing. So is
there a chance if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy that the fertilized egg could move on its own? Does that ever happen?
No, because it's implanted into the tissue.
So once it's diagnosed ectopic, like it
there's
has
no
to be removed.
slide down. There can be delays. Like sometimes inside the fallopian tube, it's a little bit like the walls are either thicker in the fallopian tubes, or because of things even like smoking, it can be a harder push out. But once the fertilized egg, once that embryo attaches itself to the wall of the fallopian tube, there's no movement because it's attached itself, so it can't go through.
And are there some doctors who remove part of the fallopian tube?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, just depending on like the state, depending on you know, how long into it, how the size. Sometimes it's better to remove the fallopian tube. It just depends on the situation. Every situation
I feel like that's what I hear a lot of pro-life doctors saying, is that like that's the procedure that needs to happen. And my kind of, obviously not having a great understanding about it, but I would think a woman who's trying to conceive probably wants all her tubes and shit.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
Maybe she doesn't want to have that happen, but it seems that a lot of doctors will say, well, that could be, you know, a damaged tube to begin with, and so we need to go ahead and remove it so it doesn't happen again, and there's, you know, more loss of life later on down the road. And so that kind of seems to be what I'm hearing.
It is true that once you have an ectopic pregnancy, you are at higher risk to have more ectopic pregnancies. So there, you know, it could be a genetic thing passed down from your mother. If your mother had multiple ectopic pregnancies, you could possibly too. It just depends on your anatomy, and you know, you get most of your anatomy from, you know, your mother. So it is yeah, it's possible that once you have them, you are likely to have you're at a higher risk to have more.
So you don't necessarily have to remove it. I'm trying to wrap my brain around why a lot of pro-life physicians seem to think that that's what makes it like official and like the more ethical way. And of course, like many of them will be Catholic, and so they'll talk about double effect and the idea that they're not going in to terminate the unborn child. It's more that they want to, they have to remove this part of the tubes, and then unfortunately the child's going to die, but the intention is not to kill the child. And so in their mind,
well, even with a methotrexate injection, right? Nobody's intending to kill a child with methotrexate. So it's the same thing. Your intent is to fix the pregnancy that's in the fallopian tubes. So, you know, because I've heard it argued that way, and it's, you can argue the same thing back. Like, because I used to work on an oncology unit at a hospital, not as a nurse, but when I was a tech just before nursing school, and we did those injections on our unit. And you know, when I was uneducated, I was kind of like, oh well, you know, I just could never like do that. Like, I'm pro-life, blah blah blah. But it's not an abortion. You know what I mean? You are fixing the problem, which is an ectopic pregnancy. So,
and you're saving the life of the mother. And I mean, that's the thing that when this becomes a quote unquote pro-life issue, I'm always thinking like, if the mother dies, the child dies anyway. And I don't know any pro-lifers who propose this type of stuff. So I think that's why it was so bizarre to see it actually in legislation. It wasn't just like pro-life folklore or somebody saying, well, I heard you could do it this way. Like, my personal experience with it is that my aunt claimed that she had ectopic pregnancy with my cousin Jonathan, who he's now like 30 years old, and my best memory of him is the time he shaved his eyebrows off as a kid, and he looked like such a weirdo for so long, and then like he grew up and became like a Ford model. Like, he's gorgeous and wonderful now. But she swears that it was an ectopic pregnancy, and my family, being very religious, like went and like prayed the bae away and like got him into the uterus somehow. And they, like, in their mind, this is a thing that happens, whereas it could have just been, and that's why I was asking, like, is there a chance that it can transition on its own? Wait, you're covering your mic. I can't hear you. Uncover your mic.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, so I don't know of any, like, not one case of that ever happening, and I did some research on this just before, but I will check. I'm actually heading into work right after this, so I can go into our like archives, our journal, medical journal archives, and kind of check that out and get back to you. But I truly do not believe that that's a thing. And you know, I'm sorry, just to like interrupt, like Tia, like I'm reading your comment. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's horrible.
You're better at I am or better than I am at reading comments. I haven't been reading any of them. Sorry, you guys. So I think that's kind of where I feel like when we're writing into the legislation, we're basically talking about experimenting on women with something that's kind of unfounded. And the more that I dug into what happened with the Ohio bill, because of course, like the fact that it's even in there looks atrocious for pro-lifers in general.
For the whole thing, it's ridiculous.
It's insane. And then the Federalist came out with an article talking about this procedure as if it were a thing, not a thing. And so many pro-lifers were actually outraged and like knocked this shit off, because especially for women who have experienced this themselves, like it's heartbreaking to have it sound like, oh, there was something I could have done, you know?
Right.
And so
nope, there's not.
There's not. And so a ton of pro-lifers were upset, and they ended up retracting the whole story and writing something else about it, which I thought gave them a little bit of credibility. The fact that it ever ran, though, was pretty horrifying. So when it came to the Ohio bill, a woman we work with named Savannah Martin, she runs a pregnancy center in Ohio. Like, she is a phenomenal human being and doing so much work for just women in the community and going above and beyond just diapers and wipes type stuff, but like actually providing for these people and helping these women. And so she was on this board of a pro-life organization that I guess was working on this particular bill. And she ended up, basically when she saw that that was in there, she's like, take it out, or like, I'm off the board. And she's a brilliant, crazy genius. And so they, you know, were trying to get her back on, and she ends up going over Christmas to the governor's mansion. And while she was there, she talked to a lobbyist who had worked on this bill. And he basically said, and she said, I can say this because it wasn't like a secret, he said it in front of a group of people, that we knew we would have to take something out when it got to committee. And so we were throwing that in there so we could scrap it. which, like, the fact that this is even just being used as a political theater type stunt is horrifying to me, because we're talking about actual women's lives and things that are dangerous, not to mention the optics of it, not to mention the fact that you're basically saying you don't understand science and biology whatsoever by even putting it in the bill.
Right, because the Right to Life movement, you know, the pro-life movement, the pro-woman movement, really does have science on their side. So injecting like fake science, injecting like imaginary things, medical procedures that just aren't possible, injecting those types of things does so much more damage than just to that one bill, right? It damages the whole movement. So why continue, and why even bother with that? And you know, when they asked like what's his name, Becker, the Ohio legislator that came up with this, was it Rep Becker or whatever? They were like, he was like, well, you know that this is like not a thing, right? And he was like, eh. Which is so lazy and so gross. Like, and it's the patriarchy, to be honest. It's
the effing patriarchy. Well, and this lobbyist, she said, as they were standing around, he actually told her in front of a group of people, like, calm down. And she's like, oh, hell no. Like, there's some things we, freaking patriarchy. Well, and I think that it's part of this mentality that so many people in the pro-life movement have, where you're not a doctor, you don't want to see any more abortions, so you're kind of willing to go with whatever else, because the idea is always cut off supply, cut off supply, cut off supply, do whatever we have to with these extreme laws, which we're seeing that in states that have these extreme laws, the abortion rate is actually rising, because again, like, abortion is a symptom. And so until we start actually treating the root problem of a broken, oppressive system that is harming women.
Hell yeah, sis. Like, to be like, my thing for all of these new bills that are coming out, like, oh great, like, you know, we're like winning, but we're not, by the way, but whatever. The thing about it is that, okay, so instead of just like taking things away, right? So, okay, we're going to take away abortion after 4 weeks. What are you giving people? Like, where is the help? So maybe for every whatever you do, give money to freaking crisis pregnancy resource centers, right? Who are like, do so much work. They provide food, clothing, many cases shelter for women who are pregnant and in crisis. So why don't we start like putting that into those bills? Because if you're just taking things away, then you're doing nothing to help, right?
100%.
Or like have like a biology-based sex education program in schools. That's another, you know, fun thing. You know what's so crazy?
I spent 3 hours on the phone talking to someone about a curriculum that they're going to start doing up in Canada that is about sexual empowerment. That's so freaking phenomenal. I think liberals, Republicans, everybody would accept it, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So yes, okay, continue. What's so amazing?
No, like I went to Catholic school, which like I had the most thorough sex education, like an all-boys Catholic school, that I've ever heard from anybody else. Like, you learn like the biology, you learn, you know, like basically, you know, when a girl gets her period, that's like literally her body being like, all right, it's time, let's do this, you know? And then, you know, every 28 days or so, like when your body doesn't get pregnant, it's like, it's so sad that it like, you know, cries out all of the nutrients and blood and things that it's like built up for, to create a
is that what it is? It's my vagina weeping blood.
Yes, it's
that is a very blood. Catholic thing, crying blood. I feel like that's a Catholic
It is, yeah,
thing.
no,
so
like BVM stuff, yeah, big Catholic things.
But, big Catholic things.
Like the boys, like you get horny and you just like want to throw it in anything. That's what, like, you know, I don't know. But I thought we had like a great education in my very Catholic, like all boys.
One of the best kind of curriculum things right now is Guiding Star Project does it, called The Cycle Show, and it's for girls ages 9 to 13, and basically it's like this big party where they have this big carpet uterus. They explain every function of the body, like ovulation and what your discharge is doing and why you need it and why it's important, and they frame it as a party. You've entered a raffle and Taylor Swift might be able to come to your house, and she might not come, but you might get this special guest at your house. So how are we going to prepare this party spot for it, right? And so like the whole thing is explaining all of the different parts of our reproductive system, and it was so thorough and it was so fascinating and it was adorable, because like at one point they were talking about discharge and how young girls hate discharge, and so a lot of times they want to go to the doctor and, you know, get on the pill to help like dry up fluids, and how that's really detrimental to your long-term fertility and health, overall health. because I look at my vagina as like a self-cleaning oven, and that's what scares me about birth control.
That's my favorite way to describe it. Wait.
Well, it's when it eliminates your period, and at the end of the thing, Taylor Swift didn't pick you this month. You don't get your special guest. Like the raffle didn't come, and so we've got to go ahead and clear out all the decorations and the nutrients. Because one of the things, the discharge, they unzip the lining of this uterus where they call her Miss Ooey Gooey is, and it's full of like snacks and juice boxes. Like it is the cutest description of how your body works, and makes you like love discharge by the end, which is weird. But then you have to clean it out because you don't want old snacks and old decorations, because Taylor Swift might come next month, and so that's when you have your period. That's the danger, I think, with a lot of chemical contraceptives right now that stop periods and suppress that, because I'm like, I want my self-cleaning oven to be cleaning once a month.
Yeah, right. Like scrub out, like, you know, your biscuit tin scrubs itself, right? So let it do its work. I have so many words. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna make a meme out of that one, like, for sure, 100%. So yeah, I mean, I think getting people to actually understand the function of their body, when we empower people with that knowledge, then when they see something like this in a bill, they would already have the knowledge of how the functionality works to begin with, that they would say, that's bogus science, this isn't good for us, like this isn't going to work. But I feel like both sides oftentimes play on people's ignorance about just female biology to begin with.
Yeah.
And
absolutely
rage, patriarchy.
It is the patriarchy.
We've said it enough times. We qualify for our feminist card this month.
Yeah, okay. We are feminists.
We're such oh my god, bitch, that looks amazing. I don't have mine on. I have my one from Rebirth Equity Alliance.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I did a documentary with, an interview for a documentary with, I'm blanking on his name because I don't know sports ball. The football player that's doing the documentary right now.
Oh, yes, I know sports ball.
Okay, so anyway, he's really like very good looking. And so he was very easy to talk to, like wonderful guy, like father of twins, and he's just like a really cool dude. So as we were talking, we do this whole interview, and I was wearing this shirt, and then at the end he's like, hey, I got one last question for you. And I've been real serial the whole interview, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do black mamas matter? And I responded back with the weirdest white girl thing I've ever done, where I'm like, heck yeah, black mamas matter. Like, what was that? And I don't know. And immediately yeah, I know, I looked at Jason Jones and I was like, that will not make it into the documentary. I don't know what the hell that was that just came out of my face, but like, if that's in the documentary, I die then. That's the end.
But I mean, of course, black moms matter, and like that's an important issue in and of itself, right? Because we know that maternal deaths are highest in the
How are you seeing that addressed in the medical community right now? Like, are there bias trainings that are going on in hospitals or anything done to combat it?
No, and I think it's just I don't know. So yeah, I wish I could tell you there aren't medical bias trainings that I've gone through or anybody else. But I think it's so interesting because it comes down to, like, when I have, it's really like at-risk populations, right? So, you know, are like black women celebrities, are they like, you know, having difficulties like with maternity? Maybe some, but like across the board, like no. But are women in low-income communities, mostly in like larger cities, like is that where, or in rural areas where they just don't physically have access to prenatal care? Those are the biggest determiners in like in outcome. So
because a lot of times they go for that first anatomy scan, they make sure everything's okay, they find out the gender, and then they won't see the physician again until they're giving birth. And so I think a lot of times that hinders when you don't have that relationship with your OB, and you go in and you're telling them like, I'm in pain, or I think something's wrong, or whatever. Like, they're less inclined to believe you if they don't already have that relationship built in the trust and understand how you know, normally react or overreact, or what that looks like for you. And so I think that's the most horrifying thing, is women just aren't being believed, and then they're hemorrhaging. Right, but I mean, we definitely are seeing it more.
Or like, you know what's so funny is like, I work with not where I currently am, like at the hospital where I am now, but like in other hospitals I've gone to, where there's like this older generation of obstetric providers, or like OB nurses or whatever. And they kind of like have like the okay sweetie mentality, like the, you know, like, or where, I don't know if it's like generational racism or what, but like, you know, they don't take like something from a woman of color like as seriously as they do from a white woman, because of like the way she says it, or like, you know, whatever. Like,
well, that's that implicit bias. They even did a study where they were interviewing doctors and said that doctors thought that women of color, it was like had a higher or lower pain tolerance. It was something insane like that. That it's like
insane. Yeah, no,
it's insane. Oh, that's scary. I mean, I wish more hospitals would actually be like hiring agencies to come out and do implicit bias trainings with them and help them understand, because like how many women of color and children of color are going to have to die before they realize that this is a serious problem, and especially the pro-life movement, this is a serious problem that we need to be talking about.
Help your sisters out. Like,
it's so freaking frustrating, because then what we see from the pro-choice side is Planned Parenthood literally is using this fear tactic to market abortions to women of color. It becomes, you're not safe, and so rather than fix
to have
the
an abortion
problem,
than you are to have a baby.
Right. We're not going to smash the fucking patriarchy. We're not going to actually make sure that you have adequate health care and access. Instead, we're just going to sell you a $500 abortion.
Right.
All the rage. How are we not like flaming alcoholics at this point? Like, I don't know. I just feel really angry a lot. I watch a lot of stand-up comedy to try to combat it, but sometimes it doesn't feel like that works. And I'm an angry human being.
That's okay.
There's lots to be angry about.
This is filled with gin, and I'm going to work in like 35
You're
minutes.
lying. You're such a liar.
No, it's actually tea. One of
It's
my like
tea.
New Year's things was to drink more tea and less coffee. Let me tell you how that's going.
My husband he switched to tea instead of coffee. And so he doesn't make my coffee in the morning, which was like our thing we've done for 15 years. And now I have to brew my own coffee, which means I don't get the fancy, like he would get these artisanal beans that he would grind himself and all that. And I finally just went and got like a bucket of Folgers. And I'm like, I guess this is my job now. I mean, I had all your babies and stuff. I guess I can make coffee too. Whatever. Anyway. All right. Do you have any final words about how we hate this legislation?
No, but you know, bottom line is that you can't relocate an ectopic pregnancy. Hey,
it's witchcraft. So now that we know science, we're gonna stop doing this, right, pro-life community?
Right. Yes, please, like everybody just stop. Tell your friends to stop, like to educate people, because my gosh, like I just educated you, and if I am wasting my time, then
that's not okay. Your time's very important.
Yeah.
You're one of 18 male OB certified labor and delivery nurses.
Yeah.
All right, Botch. That was fun. We'll do this again soon. Go to work.
Right.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.